Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this special Mari Live about smart masks. My name is Charlie. If you don't know me, I'm the product manager of Mari, which means that I get the absolute delight of working not just with the developers of your favorite texturing tool, but also with you guys, the users. So today we're going to start off by going through some of the recap of Mari 4. Mari 4? No, wow, it's been a long time since Mari 4. Mari 7.1, which was our last year's release. I'm going to talk through as quickly as I can because I know that you guys are not here to see me, you're here to see our special guest today. And then I'll introduce you and hand over to him. So these parts of the sessions are pre-recorded for quality purposes, but we'll be alongside you in the chat, and then we'll be here for the Q&A at the end as well. So do stay tuned and enjoy. Catch you soon.
Hi everyone, I'm going to give you a quick overview of Mari's latest updates before we get to all of the good stuff. So as you know, Mari 7 was our love letter to the artist community, giving you the bakery, our amazing new mesh map baker, and much, much more. Our latest release continues our determination to keep giving you the tools that you've asked for, and making sure that you never need to rely on any other texturing package. So please allow me to introduce you all to Mari 7.1 and the 2D painting mode. When you open any project, you'll now find a brand new 2D tab in your canvas. To get started, simply right-click in your image manager to select the option to create a blank canvas ready for drawing. You can also send any existing image to 2D for editing, meaning you never need to leave Mari to edit out that blemish or to create a brand new painting decal ever again. In 2D painting mode, you have full access to the node graph, layer stack, and paint buffer tools, so that you don't have to break your Mari muscle memory. Everything works exactly as it does in 3D. And then when you're done, you just extract the image back to your image manager. But of course, we had to take it one step further and give you the ability to live sync images between 2D and 3D. With the Image Write node, you can create a new synced image in your image manager for use in your 3D objects. So if you realize you need to tweak the color of the decal that you've already positioned, just jump back to your 2D mode, change the color, and rebake. Instant updates to your materials. Another highly requested feature slipped into the 7.1 release, the Switch node. Inspired by our friend Jens at Mari Extension Pack, the Switch node allows you to create multiple variations of materials within one node, and then just toggle between which network should be active and visible in your shader. We've also made sure that only the active stream is actually being evaluated by the shader, meaning that you and your GPU can breathe a sigh of relief. Anyone who knows me knows that I love quality of life features, and we know you do too. So as usual, we have made some small but mighty improvements to the node graph user experience. We've added a handy new Nuke-style node swap for quickly making network changes. We've made those pesky backdrop node headers easier to grab from any zoom level. And we've also added a brand new node package shelf item so that you can easily set up and share node graph templates and images between your projects and between artists. Just drag and drop from your shelf and you're ready to go. And finally, I would love for you all to say hello again to custom procedurals, or as they're now known, smart masks. First introduced in Mari 4.6 and now formally reintroduced, smart masks are there to bolster your material libraries, helping you get 75% of the way there quicker. I'll let Stuart go into more detail about these today, but I just wanted you all to know that now Mari 7.1 ships with its own library of over 50 smart masks and utilities. We've also packaged up all of the grunges that Stuart created for his smart masks and included the grunge maps produced by Johnny Fair from Mari 7 as part of the bundle itself, meaning that when you launch Mari, you now have over 100 textures to play with, more content at your fingertips. There's a lot more in Mari 7.1 than I was able to squeeze in today, so please do head over to our YouTube after the live to find a full overview video. That's all from me. I'll catch you all after Stuart's presentation in the Q&A. Thank you so much from me and the Mari team. We hope that you're as excited as we are with the path that Mari is taking to become the only texturing package that you need. Thanks.
Welcome back. Told you it was quick. That was the quickest I've ever spoke about a release, so do go and check out the full overview videos for more in detail. In more of it in detail, and also the release notes, of course. So, for the main event, let me take this opportunity to introduce you all to an artist who is not only just an incredible artist and amazing at what he does, but he's also really genuinely a lovely person. I'm very honored to know him. So this is Stuart Ansley. Stuart, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, of course. Sure. You said, I mean, that was the good part right there. I appreciate that video. That was really cool to see all the fun new stuff that's coming into Mari 7 1v1. And I'm really excited to be talking about my contribution today, the smart mask stuff. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Stuart Ansley, or Stu, whatever. I'm a texture artist, and I've been working in visual effects since around 2013. From indie studios to television to film, so a wide breadth of different things. And this is actually my second webinar that I've done with Foundry, so I'm really honored to be back. The first one was actually for the custom procedural stuff the first time around. So it's cool that I get to come back and do the second iteration of what are now smart masks. So that's super fun. Really happy to just be a part of it and share it all with you guys, because this is super fun. So about the presentation, because that's what we're here to talk about. I'm going to be going over the construction of the smart masks, how they were made, and how to use them in your projects. I'm going to talk a lot about the photography that went into it, so that you can kind of understand my process of how I captured the photos, turn them into tileable grunge maps, and what I went through for that, so that you can kind of make your own if you want to as well with the same process. It's pretty simple, but it's great to do as well. I'll talk a little bit about some of the utility nodes that come with the Smart Mask too, because they're super fun color correction tools and other little nice little tricky things that you can use in your projects to speed some stuff up as well. And I'm going to talk about how you can make your own smart masks from some of the templates provided as well. And I should mention that based on that as well, there will soon be a sub channel on the Mari Discord where users can submit their own materials and smart masks. So that'll be really cool to see what everyone is able to come up with as well. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy the presentation. Great that everyone can be here to watch, or at least I know some people are probably at work right now, so you can listen along like a podcast. You can have dailies in one ear and the presentation in another ear, and see how that goes. And there'll be a Q&A at the end. Please ask lots of questions, because I love talking about nerdy, techie Mari stuff. It's super fun.
Yes, please do pop them in the chat as we go along. Don't feel like you have to wait until the Q&A officially starts. And do keep talking to us whilst we're here. So make the most of it. And yeah, we'll see you all in a bit.
Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this presentation on one of the new and exciting features for Mari 7.1v1, the Smart Mask Collection. This is a project I worked on with Foundry earlier in 2024 with the intention of giving artists a collection of tools to quickly add detail into their textures using high quality and user-friendly nodes. Using my camera and tools available in Mari, I was able to build a collection of over 50 nodes, a series of 40 grunge texture maps based on high-resolution photography, and a variety of utility nodes, including texture placement and color correction tools. This was a really fun project to undertake because it combined my love and experience with photography, my technical knowledge of the tool sets in Mari, and my passion for texturing and visual effects. My hope is that you find them a useful addition to Mari and helpful to you when creating your own painting projects. So let's quickly begin by just discussing smart masks in general for those who are unfamiliar with the term. A smart mask is a procedural tool that combines some form of baked mesh data, such as like an ambient occlusion or a curvature map with some form of breakup. And this breakup can be in the form of a grunge texture map that's been created procedurally or from a photograph, or just using a simple noise or a series of noises together. The way we use smart masks is to simulate things like weathering, distress, dirt, other grungy effects in areas that they would logically accumulate on your model. For example, ambient occlusion is a baked map that will highlight the recesses in your mesh, or curvature will highlight convex edges or cavities. Once you have those areas isolated, you can procedurally add detail to them, which helps you quickly add depth and interest into your paint. Weathering and distress and all that will add a history to your piece and make it fit with the world around it, avoiding a perfect and fake look. So this is where Mari's new collection of smart masks come in. What you get is over 50 new procedural smart mask nodes ready to be dropped in from the smart mask shelf. All of these were designed with a few things in mind. They're meant to aid in your already existing workflows, creating weathering and dirt and dust passes on your asset. This collection of nodes helps you avoid reinventing the wheel every time you need to create a new dust or edge wear pass for a new asset. This can help you save time and quickly get your ideas on the model rather than having to rebuild detailed procedural systems from scratch every time. It was also really important to me that each piece in the collection be as high quality as I could manage, from the photography involved to the function of the nodes. There were a few standards I knew I needed to hit in order to make them useful and user-friendly. One, they needed to be lightweight. It's not convenient to have a highly complex, highly detailed mask setup that's so heavy you can't tumble your model around. So speed was important. Another thing was flexibility. It needed to meet workflows you're already comfortable with and open up new possibilities for you as an artist to try out. It has to be easy to alter mask properties, swap masks around, and use custom masks to get exactly what you need out of it. Most of all, it needs to be super high quality and give a good result. I was really meticulous with the photography process, and I wanted to base as much detail as I could off of real-world examples. This is a glimpse of what you get in the Mari Smart Mask shelf. You'll find over 40 smart masks ready to plug into your node stream. There's also a small selection of utility nodes, ranging from smart mask templates, color correction tools, and texture placement tools. All of these are meant to enhance your painting and your experience with the smart mask collection. Lastly, you'll find a huge assortment of grunge texture maps. These are the same textures found in the nodes themselves, but kept separately so they're easier to mix and match and use in different ways throughout your project. The list of requirements to get started with the smart masks is quite simple. All you really need are some baked mesh maps connected to either a geochannel or a teleport broadcaster. You can also use a custom painted or generated mask, or in some cases, such as with the world space normal or position based effects, you don't need anything more than to select a node and add it to your graph. Here's a quick demonstration of how to add a smart mask to your scene. First, I'll use the bakery to create a baked ambient occlusion mesh map. I can use either a geochannel or a paint node output, which I can connect to a teleport node. But in this case, I'll use a geochannel. Now that I have my ambient occlusion geochannel, all I have to do is open the smart mask shelf, drag and drop a node into my scene, connect it to the mask slot, and make some adjustments. If I had chosen a paint node output, you can see I have a warning in the node properties telling me this required geochannel is missing. And also when viewing the node, you'll see it doesn't display properly. Luckily, we can fix that by connecting a teleport node to the paint node and setting the channel name to the same name that came from the bakery output. This will automatically override the missing geochannel input and automatically connects the teleport node to the smart mask, and it's safe to ignore that warning. Before I could begin creating the nodes, I had to collect the grungy texture maps to plug into them, so I had to go out and shoot some photos. I went to different areas around the city on different days to find a range of examples of weathering and grunge. It was interesting to find the different types of grunge I could find based on the location, such as a train station versus down a busy commercial street or at the beach. Different regions tell different stories, so the textures have to reflect that. The details I knew I wanted to hit were different variations of dust and dirt, different variations of scratches, smudges, streaks, splatters, drips, and leaks. These won't cover every weathering example under the sun, but they're quite commonly found in everything we might interact with and would give a good start to any asset. I wanted to ensure I had a variety of details and within that even more variety within each category. For example, different styles and density of dust or scratches to indicate how long something has been sitting in one point for, or how something has become more and more damaged over time, or just a few light scuffs if it's fairly new. There are a lot of things I found I needed to pay attention to when shooting photos. First off was the scale of detail. At first I wanted to get in really close, almost macro level to super tiny details, but the problem with that is when you apply the texture to the model, the area of the real world detail is only a few centimeters. So as soon as you start to repeat it to match real world scale, you see the repetition on everything. And another thing was directionality, like streaky or leaky details. These are more difficult to clean up and make seamless textures out of because you can't just clean them with random samples all over the place. There's a pattern to the detail and you need to blend it effectively, or else you can really easily spot errors once you start tiling them. The last thing is quite connected to the other two, but a standout point on its own. Repetition of detail. Certain elements can look really cool in a photograph or at a certain scale in a certain environment, but if the details are too big or just too identifiable, you can very easily point them out and see the repeating pattern once you start the tiling textures. So you need to be conscious of how the texture map is going to be used when you're taking and editing the photos in order to make them useful. Here's a list of gear I used to acquire the photos. So I have a Sony a7R III mirrorless camera. It shoots photos of around 42 megapixels, which results in photos around 8,000 by 4,500 pixels or somewhere in that range. High resolution is key for texture capture photography, and with my setup, I could get a full 4K texture map without having to do a lot of copying and pasting any other details other than for basic cleanup. For lenses, I used a 55mm Zeiss Sonar f1.8 and a Sony FE 80mm f1.8. Both of these lenses are razor sharp, which is exactly what I needed for this shoot. Any lens that introduces a lot of distortion or soft focus around the edges is a recipe for disaster, and you're just going to have to cut away those soft details in your final map. With a sharp lens, you can ensure a consistent level of sharp focus around the whole image. I also used a circular polarizing filter. It wasn't quite as much help as I had hoped since I really had zero control over the light while shooting outside, but it did help to cut down on some of the specular glare. And one of the most important pieces of equipment was a good, easy-to-carry tripod. Sometimes to get a good exposure, you need to have a long enough exposure that you would start to get motion blur in a handheld photo, so a tripod is an invaluable tool to prevent that. So this is a sped-up demonstration of my photo editing process. I start just by selecting the photos that are going to work best based on how well the details fill the frame, and I look out for issues like lens or motion blurring. Once I have my picks, I start off in Photoshop Camera Raw. Some of you might be more familiar with Lightroom. It's essentially the same set of tools that you can use to get a first pass of grading raw photos off your camera. I'm trying to get a good exposure that will isolate the details that I'm after, like specific marks, dust, dirt, scratches, whatever I'm trying to generate. I keep an eye on the histogram and help me keep the values in the right range and avoid any nasty looking clipping. There are a lot of tools in Camera Raw like color and exposure balance and selective color adjustments that help with isolating the details that I'm after as well. So once I have the exposure I like, I'll bring it into Photoshop and I'll start cropping and cleaning up the image. In this example, it's not super tricky because it's just a general noise pattern of dust. If you have something more delicate, like a really directional streak pattern or something with a flow to it or really identifiable details, you're going to have a harder time to clean it up, because not only does the texture have to be seamless, but your cleanup job has to integrate naturally with the flow of the texture, and certain things can really easily stand out, like you obviously cleaned something up here, or changed something or edited something here. So you have to be careful about that. Pretty much, I just use simple tools like the offset filter, clone stamp, fill tools, nothing fancy. It's just a matter of finding errors and correcting them until you have a nice seamless texture. Some important tips and tricks when trying to capture good photos for texture maps. 1, avoid shooting super wide angle or super close up. You're going to end up, in one case, with a lot of distortion and soft artifacts along the edges with a wide angle. And with a super close-up photo, you'll just be too zoomed in. You'll be capturing too small of a sample area to make it a useful tileable texture. Just a note though, both of those are going to work, especially for reference capture, but it'll just be more effort on your part to make a high-res tileable with that type of setup. Speaking of high resolution image sensor is your friend. The higher the native resolution you can shoot, the more unique detail you can capture in a single image. This means less copy and pasting or image stitching to fill up a 4K map, instead of just taking a single picture that's 4,000 pixels or bigger and cleaning up the seams. There's a technique to capturing a good 4K image in a single photo, and that's to fill the shorter side of the frame with the tiling area of the photo. So what I mean by that is, if my camera shoots 8,000 by 4,500 pixels, I'm not capturing an 8K image in each photo. I'm capturing a square 4,500 by 4,500 pixel image with some bleed room on the left and the right sides. If you're shooting 4,000 by 3,000 pixels, you're really only getting a 3,000 or 3K square image, and bump that up to 4K, and you have to find an extra 1,000 pixel of detail to add into that square, either from other photos or copying and pasting from the same image. Or you can jump down to 2K, but then you're throwing away 1,000 pixels of detail. So all that to say, high megapixel images are your friend to help you capture high-res tiling textures. I mentioned this earlier as well, but using a tripod, especially in low light, is imperative. You're trying to balance, when you're taking photos like this, you're trying to balance a good depth of field, brightness, and low noise, all of which are controlled by aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. If you use a tripod, shutter speed can be infinite. It doesn't matter at that point, which means aperture and ISO can be set to a nice sweet spot like f8 and ISO 100 to give you a good range of focus and low noise. It's also important to retain a big, flexible, dynamic range, so shoot in RAW and save out 16-bit images. You can work in 8-bit images just fine, it's not going to be an issue, but you're locking yourself into less flexibility when applying really intense grades and contrast adjustments compared to what a higher bit depth can give you. So I'd like to give a bit of a demonstration of what I'm talking about. I have this image open in Photoshop. It's a 16-bit document and image, and I just want to give a really extreme example of how far you can push a contrast adjustment in an image like this that has a high dynamic range. So I'm going to start by creating a contrast layer, and I'm going to call it decontrast. And I'm going to set this all the way down to -99. And everything is basically turned gray. If you squint really closely, you can kind of see there's some detail, but most of it is gone. I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to call this add contrast. And I'm going to pull this all the way back up to 99 on the other side. And if I group these and turn them on and off, it looks kind of like I haven't done anything. The reason for that is what I've actually done with this first adjustment. I have taken, let's say these are all the values in the image. Here are the highlights, and here are the shadows. What I have done is I have taken all of the values and I have squashed them into this range right in the middle. And then what I've done is I have taken those values with this adjustment and I have stretched them all the way back out again. And the reason why it looks like I haven't done anything is because I'm using a 16-bit image. And 16-bit images have a range of values of around 65,500 and something. So it's around 65,500. And if we use these contrast adjustments to reduce the values to about 1%, so times 0.01, that is still 655 different tonal values in this image. In comparison, if we used an 8-bit image, that is 256 values times 0.01 or 1%. That is 2 values, or 2 or 3. Let's say 2 or 3, somewhere in there. So let me show you what would happen if I were to take this image with these contrast adjustments still applied and set this to 8-bit mode. You can see everything collapses into just a few blocks of color. And if we look at the individual channels, you have a light gray, a mid gray, and a dark gray, and that's it. Because you do not have as much range as you have in a 16-bit image. This is an extreme example. You're not going to be pushing things this far, but this is an example of what you can do with a 16-bit image versus an 8-bit image. So let's talk about how each of the smart masks are built on the inside. Everything is broken up like a little story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is where the masks come in, either AO, curvature, world space normal, or position, or a custom mask. There are some controls in this section to adjust the mask for its intensity, how far you want it to reach, and some other special attributes like that. Then in the middle is the breakup section. This is generally populated with one of the texture grunge maps, which gets blended with the input mask, usually through a multiply or an overlay blend mode or something similar. Sometimes there's also procedural noises to add extra detail. Then finally is the output section. This adds some controls to how you want the final result to look with some contrast and brightness controls, and also a debugging tool to fine-tune the mask and texture map to make it perfect for what you need. Here I'm going to show you more of the anatomy of the smart mask, and we can take a look inside the node so you can see the inner workings and how they're grouped somewhat into sections. On the left side are the input mask options. In this example, we are viewing an ambient occlusion node, which is one of the more simple mask setups. A geochannel is at the root with 2 optional overrides. The first one here is for a teleport receiver node. It's important to note that both the geochannel and the teleport node are designed to integrate smoothly with Mari's bakery. By using the default naming convention from the bakery, the nodes should connect automatically inside the smart mask. The next optional input is a custom mask. This could be anything from paint data to a custom baked map, a procedural, or even another smart mask. We will go over all these options in more detail a little later in the presentation. After the input mask, there's a simple set of controls to adjust the contrast of the mask. You can effectively use this to adjust how far the mask spreads and its intensity. In the middle of the graph is the texture input section. This section controls everything you see in the breakup tab of the smart mask properties. You can adjust the texture placement type, tiling, angle, and position of each texture. Some nodes have special attributes and extra noises built into them, and you'll find controls for their properties here as well. You can also see how the texture is merged with the mask. In this case, the grunge map is first multiplied with the mask to isolate it to the white areas of the input mask, and then the grunge is then again overlaid on top of the result, giving it a little bit more pop and contrast. Finally is the output section, whose controls are found in the first tab of the smart mask properties. Here we've got a second contrast adjustment. The first contrast adjustment found in the input section is meant to generally control just the input mask. The second contrast adjustment is meant to add punch to the overall result of the smart mask before plugging it into your network. There's also a special display switch that you can use to debug your smart masks. The first switch option is connected to the final result of the mask. The second is used to view the input mask. And the third is used to debug the texture. These are meant to help you isolate and fine-tune different variables in the smart mask itself. Please note that this display switch is only available in the Mari 7 version of the Smart Mask collection, as previous versions of Mari do not support the switch node. One thing I was really excited about in making these smart masks is anyone is able to just dive inside the node, make changes and tweaks, or just to see how things work and are put together. I'd really suggest you take some time to explore and dig through it. There's some pretty fun and complex operations happening under the hood, all with nodes. One thing I'd really like to mention while discussing the construction of the smart masks is a pivotal tool in their creation, the node editor from Mari's extension pack. The extension pack node editor made it easy to arrange the layout of all the node properties, create tabs, and many more significant tasks while developing the tools. The Smart Mask node properties would not have been organized so effectively without this tool. Now that we have a better understanding of how the nodes work and are set up, I'd like to take a deeper dive to show the differences and nuances between each type. Each mask is based on either AO, curvature, world space normal, or position, and each type has different controls and attributes. I've laid out some different basic smart mask templates, plus some more complex examples. Let's start with ambient occlusion, since we've covered that a bit already. The controls are quite simple. We have an option for inverting the mask, and some contrast controls to adjust the spread of the mask. By playing with the fall off and position, you can adjust how far the mask reaches, as well as the overall density of the mask. This mask is called Concrete AO. It uses an image of some chipped, dirty concrete as its grunge mask input. By adjusting the input and output contrast controls, I can dramatically affect the final look of the smart mask. A helpful tip: there is a small amount of documentation stored in each node in the Node tab in the Properties menu, and the same information comes up as a tooltip when hovering your mouse over the node. So if you're curious about any of the functions, you can refer to these guides. Next is the Curvature node. This node has a few more options to help you isolate concave and convex areas in your model. By default, it will display the curvature map as its basic input state. By sliding down this input map slider, you can set everything to black. At that point, you can begin playing with either the edge, cavity, or surface slider to highlight or exclude areas on the geometry. With edges or cavities active, you can use the edge or cavity range slider to try to expand or tighten the selection. In this example, the long drips node highlights and removes areas of the grunge map based on the edge and cavity selection. Just like the ambient occlusion node, the fall-off and position sliders can be used to accentuate and shift areas of the input mask. After curvature is world space normal. This allows you to quickly create a gradient for any plane on the model facing upwards, to the left and right, or the front and back. Again, use the fall off and position to adjust the tightness and position of the gradient. The example here is called medium dust. It's simply a speckly dust grunge map blended with a top-down gradient to simulate dust gathering on the surface of an object. If at any point you would like to adjust the scale or placement of the grunge map, you can simply jump over to the Breakup tab and make adjustments as needed. I'll set this to triplanar projection, adjust the scale, and adjust the projection angle. The last basic node type is the position gradient mask. This, like the world space normal mask, creates a gradient on the mesh from top to bottom, left to right, or front to back. But this gradient ignores the facing angles of the planes on the mesh and only cares about the position in 3D space. There are some special debugging tools built into the node to help you properly place the gradient in space. By activating the Debug Enable flag, you may see some funny colors. I'll start by adjusting these sliders, and what you see here are 3 zones. The pink highlighted area is the floor, and anything in that zone is the brightest value in the gradient, or solid white. The green highlighted area is the ceiling, and anything in this zone is the darkest values, or pure black. Everything in between those 2 zones is a smooth linear gradient. Knowing this, you can position the gradient in space from point A to point B. For example, I could expand the gradient to go from the bottom of my mesh to the top. I'll adjust the floor until the pink zone is directly on the lowest point of the mesh, and I'll adjust the scale values to expand the green zone to the top of my mesh. Now I have a nice smooth linear gradient from the top of the mesh to the bottom. Disabling the debug slider, you can see the output change. That's because the fall-off slider has been adjusted by default. You can play with the position slider and adjust the gradient in a more controlled way between those 2 points. The dirt spray node uses the position mask to add some sprayed and splattered dirt to the lower portion of the model. I can use the contrast adjustments to affect the placement and overall quality of the effect. The last mask type I want to talk about is the custom mask input, found in many of the smart masks. What this enables you to do is blend any custom painted or procedural mask with any of the pre-built smart masks to utilize the controls and blend modes set up to create your own custom effects. In this example, I'm showing the long leaks node. This looks kind of cool, but also a little bit wonky. It's not really meant for surfaces like this one here, and it can look a bit strange if the mesh doesn't have vertically oriented planes, like the walls of a building, for example. But there are some areas that look a little bit interesting about halfway down. The default position mask isn't really working well for me, so I painted this custom gradient mask by hand to add some of the leaky effect to the underside of this paint splat. Now when I plug it in, I get a much cooler effect that I actually want, and I can paint and adjust as I need to enhance the detail. One thing to note, any of the special input mask properties will be disabled and have no effect once a custom mask override has been connected, though contrast adjustments should still function. Let's switch gears and talk about the utility nodes that come with the smart masks. These are different tools that I've developed for my own personal curiosities and experiments, seeing what can be done with Mari's node graph. Each relies on some interesting math to make it work, which I find is a fun way to combine my love of puzzles and problem solving with painting and texturing, and I get a really cool tool out of it in the end to help my workflow. First, there are some texture placement nodes, which are meant to help you control multiple tiled textures or 3D textures in a group at the same time. There's a warp node you can use to add some distortion to your textures in 2D or 3D space with directional or omnidirectional distortion. There's a channel mixer node based on the adjustment in Photoshop. And lastly, there are some interesting color correction and enhancement tools I call the spot toners and spot stainer, which are kind of a combination of a burn and dodge tool that can handle color effects really well too. First, let's cover the simple texture placement tools. These are nodes to control the placement of 2D and 3D textures. These are useful if you have multiple textures that all need to line up together. For instance, a set of material textures. In this example, I have one material using a series of UV coordinate textures, all combined into a single material. And in this example, I have multiple texture maps combined using triplanar projections. The texture node is a combination of the tiled and triplanar projection node. Load up a texture image and you can easily switch from one projection mode to the other, with all relevant controls at your fingertips. The warp node is a great way to add a bit of distortion to your 2D or 3D textures. Take note that the warp node needs to be plugged upstream of the texture, not downstream. The effect is technically warping the 2D or 3D placement data, not the texture itself. You can switch between 2D and 3D warping depending on the desired effect, and you can enable or disable directional warping to change whether the warp pushes the textures in a single direction or randomly in all directions. Next, we'll have a look at the color correction nodes. The channel mixer works by using the incoming R, G, and B channels as a mask to add or remove colors from those channels. A selected color can be added or subtracted from regions in the texture that contain those colors. Now, if that explanation didn't make any sense at all, that's totally fine. The channel mixers effect is way easier shown than explained. So, in the node properties, there are these 3 sections for red, green, and blue. And under each section, there are red, green, and blue sliders, plus a 4th offset slider. By manipulating these sliders, I can edit the colors on the shader ball. I think of it this way. I can add red to the green areas, or I can add blue to the green areas of the image. Or I could use the offset slider to add green overall everywhere in the image. You'll notice some areas suddenly become dark as I change the sliders around. That's because of this clipping warning, letting you know you've pushed the color past a value of 1 and risk clipping. This is a powerful color correction tool because it enables you to make color adjustments that are isolated to only one color at a time. Some examples of effects would be to warm up the greens, make them more yellow, or to cool off the reds by adding blue and green, desaturating the red areas. In this example here, I have a diffuse map of a head. With some subtle tweaks, I can make the skin more pale by removing some of the redness, or I can get more dramatic with a darker, zombie-like skin effect. On the topic of color correction tools, I'd like to discuss the Spot Toner, Spot Toner 2, and the Spot Stainer. First up, let's discuss the Spot Toner. The way this node works is you start with a gray layer and start painting your corrections. Anything brighter than gray will brighten the image, and anything darker will darken the image. And any color will tint the image as well. You can see I've already done a little bit of paint work to start the demonstration. In this example, I'm taking a brighter bluer color to remove some of the blemishes on the subject's face to smooth out the skin. The inspiration for this tool is a combination of spot tone painting and darkroom photography and burning and dodging, which means to selectively add highlights and darker areas to an image. A similar tool is the Spot Toner 2. This works the same way as the original Spot Toner, but where the Spot Toner will multiply the painted colors with the base image, the Spot Toner 2 will use it to affect the gamma. Brighter values will brighten the gamma, darker values will darken the gamma, and again, colors will tint the result. This tool is great for lifting shadows without adding any extra saturation, or for adding pop to areas that need a little bit more color and depth. Lastly is the Spot Stainer. One major difference is you need to use a black mask with the Spot Stainer rather than a gray paint layer with the Spot Toner combo. As you paint white into the mask, you'll see the selected color start to appear. The more white you add, the deeper the color becomes. This is to simulate the way a stain builds up in the real world or how refractive color changes based on the surface thickness. You can use the controls to change the hue, saturation, and intensity of the resulting color. The last thing I want to cover is customization and creating your own custom smart masks from nodes included in the collection. It's very simple to develop your own tools. You can either start with any smart mask and make some adjustments or swap texture masks, or you can start with a clean template version of each of the smart mask types. Anything can be edited and changed to your personal workflow as you need. I've started here by already baking some mesh maps using the bakery. I can then go into the smart mask shelf and search for the template nodes and drag and drop one into my graph. Then I can add a grunge map to the breakup tab. I can make a few adjustments, and once I'm happy with the result, I can jump over to the export tab and write it out to disk. Then I can create a new shelf and import it and use it whenever I want. So this brings us to the end of the presentation. I want to thank everyone who joined in today, and I hope I inspired you to try out these new smart masks in your next project. I also want to give a big thanks to the folks at the Foundry, Charlie, Vanessa, Terry, Martin, and Mark, for helping to put this project together. Thank you also to Peter and Johnny for testing and giving some good feedback for the nodes, a lot of which made it into the final build. And a big thanks to Jens for your work on Mari Extension Pack. This project wouldn't have come together so smoothly without it. And lastly, a huge thanks to everyone on the Mari dev team for continuing to make Mari one of my favorite toys that I'm lucky enough to get to play with every day. If anyone would like to learn more about Mari Smart Masks, please feel free to ask questions, and if we run out of time, you can find me on the unofficial Mari Discord server. Thanks very much.
Oh, see, I said you were the loveliest person ever. I was right. That was so nice. I'm sure the dev
Everyone
team will
else had
appreciate that as well.
some really lovely things to say as well in the comments, so thank you. All the friendly faces that I've seen around the industry and all your comments really mean a lot to me, so thank you so much.
It was really awesome to see. It was definitely a crash course in texture theory and all those things that you think. I think a lot of people think texturing begins in 3D, and it doesn't. There's a lot of prep work that goes into it, and seeing that all laid out and done so in a way where people can follow along and actually take notes, because I definitely took notes. Then it's
Cool,
really, really
cool.
great.
Cool. Yeah, there's a couple people that I've talked to. I think one of the guys in the chat, I think Giorgio, and there's another guy named Paul that have talked about this like mise en place method where you gather your building blocks and you start from there and then you start painting in 3D. And these I hope will be part of those building blocks. I think that's a cool process and a good way to go about it.
Definitely. So everyone, please do pop questions in the chat. Anything, doesn't matter how small you think it is or how insignificant, we'd love to answer them. In the meantime, I have some questions for you, Stuart.
Cool.
Looking back, obviously I know that we gave you a little bit of a tight deadline in terms of working to releases and outside of your actual, real job. If you were to make a second batch of smart masks at any point, is there anything in the process that you would approach differently?
I would just add more variety of different things.
Just more.
Just add, well, like there's so many different types of mark making that exists in the world around us that I could only get so many different things. So I focused on like dust and dirt, some scratches, a few smudges and scuffs here. There were certain things that were elusive to me. Like I was trying to get good photos of streaky stuff on glass, but it's just so, I was like, I need to come up with a really complex photography rig for something like that, or I need to, I don't know. I had ideas for things that I could do to capture photos like that, but I would go to a bus stop and they had big glass panes of glass that had these really cool stains and splatters on them, but everything was so muddy I couldn't like pull a clean mask from it. So I would love to spend more time doing that. That would be fun.
And you'd almost need the clean version and the dirty version.
I need to bring. I was like, I should bring. I need to bring like a big like black like silk or something and put it behind, and then have like another lighting setup. I was like, I can't do this in public. I need to just set this up in my apartment and lock myself away and take a bunch of photos for a little while.
It is something that I have tried briefly over Christmas. I do texturing over Christmas for fun. Taking pictures on top of the iPad, and they're like, clean iPad, take a photo, streak my hand across it, iPad, take a photo. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To extract
There's some cool stuff you can do. Yeah.
It's a hard one. I mean, a lot of these, as you mentioned in your recording, a lot of these were inspired by what you felt that you needed in your day-to-day work in industry. So I wonder, going forwards, are there any of those that you feel will become your most used smart mask or utility that you've created?
I've started using a couple here and there. Hard to say which ones are my favorite so far. There's a couple of the curvature ones that have like some nice streaky lines in them and really highlight the edges that are super fun. Yeah, getting some. I don't know. I love the utility nodes. Like a lot of those were spawned from stuff that I did way back when I was doing YouTube stuff and with the original custom procedural. So I saw those as a way to add that legacy into Mari and like have it just be part of it. So like someone in the chat mentioned the spot toner stuff and the spot stainer stuff. I love those. So those are super fun. But as for the masks themselves, I don't know. They're just so fun to play with and like drag and drop, easy to iterate and easy to come up with different ideas really quickly. So lots of fun ones there. There's some good leaky ones. The streaky leaks. Those ones are cool.
The leaky ones are a lot of fun to play with. I definitely have been playing. Well, the Mari team entirely have been playing with them. As soon as we got the first delivery of this of the package from you, the QA team especially were like, oh, "Where have these been? We needed these all the time." So it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
I will just say on that note, with the packages, obviously 7.1 they all ship with. So as soon as you launch Mari 7.1, you will have Stuart's shelf of smart masks there, as well as the new grunge shelf, which has the maps from Stuart and also from Johnny Fair, who I've seen in the chat. If you are not ready to move up to 7.1, feel free to head over to our product download page on the Foundry website. You will be able to find a link both to a shelf containing all of the grunges, both Johnny's and Stuart's, and you will find a smart mask bundle from Stuart that is compatible with Mari 6 and earlier. So anything that goes from 4.6 when custom procedurals were included to Mari 6. Obviously, when you bring them in, they'll revert to being called custom procedural instead of smart mask, but we can live with that. So it's okay. I've just seen a couple of questions come in. Oh, there's a couple for me. I guess I'll start with those. There's a question from Ignacio. Could you please walk us through the process of communication between the Mari dev team and your ideas? Is this one for me or for Stuart? Could you elaborate?
I'm happy to talk about how the project went.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we kind of approached the project from the beginning mostly based on, or like I approached it mostly from a photography perspective and the idea of just adding some sort of grunge utilities into Mari as like a default shelf for people to use. And then we went back and forth on some ideas, and what kind of originally the original start for how the masks would work with the grunges and everything like that was the way that I make things like ambient occlusion and curvature smart masks and stuff is as long as I can get a gradient with something and I can either multiply or overlay or whatever blend that with some sort of grunge breakup, then I can create a mask from that. So I wanted to utilize like ambient occlusion, curvature, world space normal, and position, and figure out how can I create these gradients and blend them with high quality photography so that I can get like really simple, quick and easy nodes to use for people. So I presented my first pass of that to the Mari dev team, and they were like, this is cool. And they had some notes and we went back and forth. And then there was a couple rounds of submissions, got some good feedback from some of the folks in the chat here. And some of those notes made it into the final versions. And yeah, that's what you've got today.
Yeah, it was a really, really exciting process. And I think in terms of what we asked for, it was very much let Stuart run with it and see what you do, which worked out great for us. Obviously, we did, like Stuart said, give some feedback. We made some amendments, such as the switch node being included in the final version,
It's very
versus
helpful.
having a separate bundle. The switch node came quite late in the Mari 7.1 development process, so Stuart had already delivered his bundle prior to that, so we went back and forth with that as well. But it was a really great experience from our side as well, and yeah, you were just awesome to communicate and collaborate with. So thank you.
Cool.
There is a question from Vincent. Hello, Vincent. Is the teleport receiver channel name, is that a field that can be exposed as a parameter of a custom group?
I don't think you can expose a channel name, but I've seen a couple questions in here, and this is one of the ones that's what the custom input is for. The custom input is like kind of a way that I have used smart masks and smart materials in the past, in that I will just simply grab like a teleport broadcaster or a radio broadcaster or whatever, and then just pop it, connect it, plug it in right away into like a custom input into a node that I'm using, and run with that. So the channel naming stuff that comes from the bakery, that's there for ease of use with the bakery. But if that naming convention doesn't work for you, that's what the custom input is for. Just grab something, plug whatever resource you need in, and run with that. It's hopefully a simple workflow.
Yeah, anything that can be exposed has a little spanner icon next to it. I apologize, I really can't remember at the moment if it's next to the broadcaster and receiver field in general. I have a feeling no, because we have been talking about the possibility of what a multi-channel teleport node would look like, multi-channel broadcast, multi-channel receiver, in which would essentially be like a group of contained broadcasts and receivers which would be promoted up. So that's something that we are talking about internally. So I don't believe they can currently, like Stuart said. And Rory is right. If anybody has any questions for things outside of this, or wants to get their ideas into Mari, chat to us on Mari Discord. We are there. We might not always answer unless you at us yelling, but we're all there, we're all watching, and we have learned a lot from just being more involved in the community with you guys. So thank you very much for that. Okay. Scroll up for some questions. There was a question very early on from Mikal. I believe that's how you say your name. Apologies if it's not. You asked about the difference between extension pack smart masks and ours. Would you like to answer that one, Stuart? I know you've got experience with extension pack.
Yeah, the extension pack smart masks are, I would say, very robust and have a huge selection of properties and tools inside the node. They have a lot of things are compacted into one node there, so you have access to your different baked mesh maps. You have access to different texture maps. You have a lot of options, let's say. Those are very good, but the problem that I found with something that's like a big Uber node is that it can be slow when you are trying to run it in real time. So you have to bake them down with a bake point or bake to paint or something like that. So the purpose of one of the things that I talked about the Mari smart masks is that they need to be flexible and run as high a frame rate as possible. So that's why you don't have access to like ambient occlusion, curvature, world space normal, and position all in one single node. They're kept separate because you might not need to have access to all different things. Or if you do, you can grab one of the basic ambient occlusion, plug it into like a leaky node custom input, and you can kind of create what you need. You don't need to have everything all into one that slows down your project. So yeah, I would say the difference is that the Mari smart masks are like a light version that is flexible and easy to use that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jens, the owner of Mari Extension Pack, also just mentioned in the chat that his versions are quite a bit more expensive computationally than ours as well, which is something to say as well about the switch node. I did mention in the recording, but that obviously was originally something that came from our extension pack, and our new version of the switch node, unlike the one in an extension pack, is able to say, hey, I only need this stream, so let's not compute the rest of it as part of the shader, which is really, really good. So we love taking inspiration from extension pack, so thank you, Jens.
I certainly
yes,
used it in this project too. It was really, really
yes.
helpful. The node editor is a great table tool to lay out all your properties and set defaults and things like that. So definitely check it out if you haven't.
Yes, and that relates to some discussion that was happening, as well as a question again from Ignacio about the flexibility of the UIs that Katana has for its materials and its nodes. Yes, completely understand and agree. A node graph, well, a node properties UI overhaul is something that we have talked about for quite a bit. It's something that we looked into, and we realized there's an easy way we could do this, or there's a better way we could do this. So we're trying to figure out which avenue, the better way being quite a bit more complicated, but would, end up with better results for you guys. We are interested in interop between the applications all across Foundry, so not just Mari and Katana, but Mari and Nuke as well as obviously Katana and Nuke has their own interop going on with the Katana Nuke bridge. So that's all something that we do discuss, and we have designers that work across the products who are also helping us unify a bit more in that sense as well. So watch this space. I don't know if I can promise it would be coming this year, but it's something that we're definitely aware of and wanting to do. There's just some other exciting big projects that we are working on this year. So yeah, I think we're probably running a bit over on time, but let's ask Rory's question. Yeah. Our Stu's presets the reason for the Mari installer being a lot
Lots
bigger
of photos.
than it was. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Like
the
I said,
grunges. It was both Johnny
big
and
high
Stuart's
quality.
fault.
Yeah, big high quality photos. They take up a lot of space.
They do. This is something that we are again looking into. We would like to make it lighter and have it so that they like content, because we are looking to put more additional content into Mari, with future releases as well. You might have seen, for instance, people talking about this on the Discord, like Brad of Brad's Brushes was talking about what would a new Brad's Brush bundle look like. If we do keep adding content to Mari, we are going to have to come up with a better solution for this. And what we'd like to do is have like a download button in the shelf that perhaps you can go and ping to. We know that isn't necessarily a route for everyone, especially if you are air gapped in a studio. So we are exploring options right now. When will it be available to try out? Mari 7.1 is available. Try it out now.
Today.
Now. Go. Well, all right. We are officially over time, and yes. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It has been really a pleasure, and I know that I've learned a lot, so I'm sure everyone else has as well. Please, if you like this content, if you would like to see more artist showcases and breakdowns and that sort of thing, less of me, more of the people who know what they're doing, then like and subscribe. Follow along with our YouTube videos, get notifications for when the next live streams are going to be, and we can do more of these. The next one we have coming up is on February 12th. We'll be joined by Peter Avston, who is Measurement Studios in the chat, and he's be talking about his Snails from Space project for beginner to pro texturing, which is going to be very, very exciting. Is there anything else you want to say before we head off, Stuart?
Just a big thank you for everyone coming today and checking it out. And I hope that you enjoy the tools. I hope that they're useful too. It's really fun making them, and I'm very happy that they're in your hands. So best of luck.
Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.